welcome to another episode of Zwick's Flicks, the Ed Zwick Podcast. I am your host, Ryan, and with me today, as we've been doing on all of these episodes, a new guest co-host is joining me today. I'm very thrilled and honored to have the lovely Cayley. How are you doing today?
I am so wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. I am pumped to talk about Ed Zwick.
That's good to hear. Before we get going, why don't you tell people where they can find you?
So I actually do movie reviews also. I have never reviewed an Ed Zwick film, which is shocking, I know. But I do movie reviews over on YouTube. You can find me at Once Over with Cayley, which is Cayley. In addition to that, you can find me as my alter ego, Lucy Tightbox, over on Who Are These Podcasts, where we review bad podcasts. So lots and lots of reviewing things. I love the reviews.
Yeah, that's funny. Hopefully this show doesn't get on Carl's radar to have a show to review. No. That's where I discovered you. Of course, I listened to Who Are These Podcasts, and the gang from there has been very kind to me. They've come on my other podcast, the Worst of the Best podcast that I do, and you guest co-hosted on that and did a Kiss album, Love Gun, which was a thrill to review that album with you. And so if you're listening to this and you want to hear Cayley and I talk about a Kiss album, go check out the Worst of the Best podcast. So you've never reviewed an Ed Zwick film, but that doesn't really surprise me. Why don't you tell people what the last couple of movies are that you reviewed on your channel? I might give an idea of what kind of movies you review on your channel.
Yeah, so I do a little bit of everything is how I always like to describe it. So I did the movie Blood Rage from 1986, a nice Thanksgiving twin horror movie all about Thanksgiving. So that was a super fun one. And then I also did recently Superstar. I've been doing a little SNL series. So in the same way that you're kind of focusing in on Ed Zwick, I am currently focusing on SNL skits turned into movies, which is absurd. There is a lot of trash in there. Yeah.
There is a few. It's Pat or stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh, I did. It's Pat. That was a rough one.
So what is your history with Ed Zwick? Are you familiar with his filmography? Were you surprised about maybe what you've already seen of his and you didn't realize those were his films?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I did not even realize. You asked me if I wanted to be on the show, and I was like, who the fuck is Ed Zwick? Like, I was like, I can't even, I'm sure that it's somebody whose movies I've seen. I just don't know who that is. Like, I can't place it off the top of my head. So I had seen the movies that first jumped out when I looked at his filmography were Blood Diamond and The Last Samurai. I had really enjoyed The Last Samurai. That was a movie that I remember enjoying quite a bit when I watched it. And Blood Diamond I also thought was good. It's not a movie I ever wanted to revisit, but I enjoyed it. I was just totally shocked that I had never really dove into his filmography because I do tend to get really attached to directors.
Okay, well, that's interesting. Okay, so it looks like you have some work to do then, is my hope.
I do.
You haven't seen Legends of the Fall?
No, I haven't. I know. I'm so behind. I tried to watch it before this podcast because I knew that you were going to ask me about it. And then I just didn't end up having time. And I was like, no, I really want to. So that is on the short list of things to watch as soon as possible.
If you think men are handsome, I think Brad Pitt is kind of handsome in that film.
That's the one.
He came out and women swooned during the Brad Pitt.
I tend to like the Crispin Glovers, not the Brad Pitts. So I don't know that it's going to work the same way for me. But I've heard that it's an incredible movie, so I can't wait to see it.
It really is. It's a beautiful film. I've seen it numerous times. Saw it in the theaters. I own it on DVD. I've watched it numerous times. I know it inside and out. It's such a beautiful film. The soundtrack. There's a scene you'll see at the beginning. I won't spoil anything, but one of the characters sings while his fiance plays on the piano and the family's gathered around. And just because you know certain things and the soundtrack of that film, you might not do it on the first viewing. I'll go on YouTube, watch that scene. I get choked up just watching that scene. It's such an emotional movie. It's a roller coaster of a film.
So where does The Legends of the Fall fall in his filmography? Is that one of his earlier ones?
It is one of his earlier ones.
Is it his first? Is it his first
his
feature?
Third. So his first film was Glory, the big Civil War film, which is one I would totally recommend. Then he did a very small, like road, sort of like a Thelma and Louise type film called Leaving Normal. And then he went big with Legends of the Fall, and then of course the other films: Courage Under Fire, The Siege, Last Samurai, Blood Diamond, which you talked about. And it's funny that you talk about Blood Diamond and how you feel about it. Excellent film.
Yeah,
I don't need to see it again.
Yep.
Yeah.
I rushed out to see it in theaters. I was all excited about it, and then I was like, "That was wonderful. I will never watch this ever again."
Well, now you got a little bit of an idea of the kind of films Ed does, and talk about from Blood Diamond. Now we're speaking of Blood Diamond. His next film after Blood Diamond, 2 years later, is this film, Love and Other Drugs. Is this even the same director? It's an amazing chasm.
So when you asked me about coming and talking about an Ed Zwick film, I was like, which one do I want to pick? I knew I wanted to pick one that I hadn't seen before. I saw this on the list and I was like, I can't believe that that's the same guy. And I was like, I want to see the complete opposite end of what his standard is. And I want to see what he does with it. So that's why I picked this movie. That's why I picked Love and Other Drugs, because it just seemed so outside of the norm for what he chose to do. And I was shocked.
And I can see why you would think that. And this is not a criticism on you, or I'm calling you out on something, but you wouldn't know his history. So he started in television and he did these types of TV shows. 30-something. You ever heard of 30-something?
It sounds vaguely familiar. It's like I can't think of it.
It's pre-Friends, or like in that area. And it's like a dramedy. So he was in that field of, what do you call it?
Like comedy romance, the rom-com, right. the rom-com that's a little bit sweeter in some way.
Exactly. And I just got to correct myself before people at me. Legends of the Fall was his fourth film. I forgot. Sorry. In fact, his first film was About Last Night with Rob Schneider. And and James Belushi. So that was a comedy.
I have seen that.
That's Ed Zwick. That's his first film.
I didn't even look at that on the list of films that he did. My goodness, I am.
Maybe because when I gave you the list, it was already done. Is probably what it was. I gave you what was remaining. So there you go. Isn't that funny? So there you go. You've seen more than you thought. It gives you an idea. He started off that way. These types of films about the human dramedy, comedy, love, and all this stuff. But he took a break from it. To be fair to you, he took a break with these other big. And a lot of them had to do with epics and warfare and sweeping soundtracks and all that stuff. So he went back to his quote unquote roots with Love and Other Drugs. This was a film that didn't have any special effects, any kind of explosions, stunts, all that sort of stuff. Okay, let's talk about what the film's about. As I'll say, people might be listening to this episode for the first time because you're here. Let's be fair. My Kiss episode was one of my most downloaded and watched. I'm not joking. It was the most on my Worst of the Best YouTube page by far. So we'll I'm honored. So keeping that in mind, what we do on this show, listeners, is we spoil, but we don't try not to spoil is what I'm saying. We'll just talk about things that we like in the film. We're not going to go in order. We're just going to talk about how characters made us feel, what the overall feeling of the film is. I think you can almost listen to any one of my episodes and still watch the film. I think you will still enjoy it. But there will be spoilers just because we're not trying to avoid the spoilers. But this is what the movie's about. Love and Other Drugs came out in 2010. It's a romantic comedy drama about Jamie Randall, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, a charming pharmaceutical sales rep in the 1990s Pittsburgh, and Maggie Murdoch, played by Anne Hathaway, a free-spirited woman with early onset Parkinson's disease. Their initial casual relationship evolves into something deeper as they navigate challenges of love, illness, and personal growth. Let's start talking about some of the actors. Judy Greer was in this film.
I love her. I love her so much. She always plays herself, but it's a great character. I mean, she's the perfect character actor because she's always her. So I always know what character she's going to be. And I just love it.
She is adorable. There's something she's one of these actresses that I don't ever go see a film because Judy's in. I gotta go see that next Judy Greer film. But every time I see her in a TV show or film, it's always a better film because she's there.
Yeah. She's kind of like that perfect, I don't want to say background actor because she's obviously more than a background actor, but she is the perfect supporting cast because she's making everything that everybody else does better. So every scene that she's in Love and Other Drugs, she does like these little, like she'll do like a little side facial expression like, oh, I'm annoyed at you. And she does it so perfectly that you're even more in love with her. You're like, oh no, but I feel for you and I want to be your friend.
Yeah, she's great at comedy. She does a lot of her films are comedy or these type of drama films. She was in Arrested Development. I don't know if you ever saw her in that or watched that show. Oh yeah,
okay. With the boob job like this, as I recall.
Yes, that's right. She's 49 now.
Crazy.
It is crazy. She looks great. Yeah.
Even I guess this movie was 15 years ago.
14 years ago, so she would have been 35 in that film. Yeah.
She still looks great.
Oh, she still looks great. And she's been married since 2011 to the same spouse, Dean Johnson. So, and she seems like the type of person, stable, marriage life.
Dean Johnson, he's an actor also?
If he is, how Wikipedia sometimes doesn't, he's not link worthy within Wikipedia. So it's Dean E. Johnson.
Oh my God, it's never going to come to me. We could move on from that.
Oh no, it's fine.
Who even knows?
Oh, you know what? He is. Oh wow. Funny enough, he was in Courage Under Fire, which was directed by Ed Zwick as well. So he's on IMDb. So you're right. Maybe you did see him in something.
I feel like I know that name. Oh no, I looked him up. That's not the guy that I was thinking of.
No, he just works behind the camera. There you go. He worked with Ed Zwick on Courage Under Fire. Funny enough. So look at that weird connection. Okay. All right. Yeah. So yeah, Judy she was like the receptionist. Jake Gyllenhaal's character is trying to sell drugs. It's the sales of drugs, right? And this is kind of different for me being a Canadian. We don't do this. I might be naive saying this, but I don't think we do drugs the way you guys do. We don't advertise drugs. There's no commercials for drugs. It might sound weird, but when we get sick, and we're talking about the kind of drugs that aren't over the counter drugs, right? So when we get sick and go to the hospital and I need an antibiotic, the doctor just says, here's your antibiotic. I don't know the name brand. I don't care what the name brand is. I'm just prescribed a drug that makes my ear infection go away. Crazy, I know. But in the States, it seems like you have companies that pester doctors, I guess, and make them say, take our drug. I don't know what's going on there.
I think that this movie actually does a pretty accurate job of explaining the pharmaceutical sales in the United States. So effectively what happens is you have a pharmaceutical salesman who is basically your door-to-door knife salesman, except he's going to doctor's offices. And instead of peddling knives or vacuum cleaners or Tupperware, he's peddling this brand of antidepressant. And they would have all of these, pens and water bottles and backpacks and all of these different things, because all they wanted to do was get the name brand of that drug out there. Because when people in the United States, when us dumb Americans see the name of something enough times, we go, oh, I should have that one. We don't do any research into it. We just say, oh, well, I want Zoloft because I saw a Zoloft commercial. Or, oh, I want Prozac because I have a pen that says Prozac on it. And then we're like, oh, that's the one that I want. And so then we tell our doctor, hey, give me this one. And that's what makes their sales go up. So there's all of these different battles between all the drug companies to how are we going to get our name up there. Something that I thought was a little bit weird about this movie is one of the first things that happens is we get a title card that this movie is taking place in 1996. I did not need that title card at all. I think it's effectively the same thing that's happening with drug sales. This movie could have been timeless, and instead the movie put a timestamp on itself.
I think the one reason why they did was there's a certain drug that gets popular at this point.
Yes, that is, yes. You are correct about that.
Yeah, so I think we can talk about it now or later when we talk about Jake, but I think that's...
I noticed that you're wearing a blue sweatshirt today for no reason whatsoever.
How dare you at my tender age of 49? Okay, never mind. Yes.
I feel so influenced. I have to go buy it now because I just saw you wearing a blue sweatshirt. That actually kind of reinforces my point. You don't have to tell me that it's 1996 because it's based around the excitement of this drug.
Yeah, I wonder why. That's a good point. I didn't give it much thought afterwards, but now that you bring it up, I can see why. It's like, do we need to know the year? Maybe just because 2010 to 96 is, funny enough, it's only 14 years difference between the time of the movie and the time that these events took place. 2010, ironically, is 14 years from now. Is that weird? This is the same distance between now and the time this film came out. And I don't think much of 2010 and 2024 being that crazily different. So I guess it was just to indicate, hey, an amazing drug is coming out.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Yeah, because it was based on a book, based on a true story about the drug. And I think that might be the thing. So it's sort of like saying, hey, we took this book, we created a romantic relationship around the book. I think the author of the book who discovered or sold the drug, Jake, is based on that person, though it's dramatized and stuff. I didn't focus much on what the book was about, I admit. I didn't really get into the weeds of the actual book, but there is a history, of course, with the drug. We're talking about Viagra, people, okay? If you're wondering, we're talking about Viagra. Okay.
We're talking about the little blue sweatshirt.
Yeah, it's the blue sweatshirt. That's right. If you eat this much Viagra the size of my hoodie, that's a little bit too much. Okay, now the next actor. Well, there was a guy who played Trey, the competing seller of drugs with Jake. They're competing with each other. They're both selling drugs, and the Anne Hathaway character was a bit of a triangle for them as well. But I didn't know this guy. He didn't look too familiar. His name is Gabriel Mocht. He has been in stuff, but I don't really know him from anything. But I don't know. Do you know him from anything?
No, he didn't really stand out to me. So he's kind of supposed to be like the bad guy character. He's supposed to be the guy that we're like, no, I don't like him. He's a meanie.
Right.
I didn't feel like he was abrasive enough, I guess, to be that character. Like I would have liked his character to be a little bit more over the top of being an ass.
He did physically assault Jake outside the parking lot a little bit. I mean, that was kind of douchiness. Yeah. Yeah, his character, and well, I'm looking at his credits. He actually hasn't done that much. In fact, he hasn't done anything I've seen him in. No offense to Gabriel. I'm sure he's a sweetheart of a guy, but he hasn't done anything that I've seen him in. The last movie he was in actually was 2013, so maybe he's retired. Oh, maybe he's retired from movies. No, sorry, he's doing Suits LA. I'm talking on my butt, and I apologize. Okay, no, he is a pretty heavy acting in the television world, the cable world. He was the main actor in Suits. You probably heard of that TV show, Suits.
I've heard of it. I have not seen it.
He's the main actor.
Cool.
There you go. You got a gig. He got a gig, and they're
good for him.
Yeah, they're doing a spinoff called Suits LA, and he's doing it again. So good for Gabriel. Okay, now we're getting into names that we're familiar with. Josh Gad played Josh Randall. Funny enough, both character and actor's name are Josh. It's just the way it goes. This apparently was one of Josh Gad's first films. Believe it or not, was this film. Yeah.
Really? I don't think that I realized that.
He'd done some other stuff, but I don't think they were very big roles. I think this is probably one of his bigger roles. Like the movie he did before this one was Marmaduke. He played Bandana Dog, the voice of. Then he was in a whole bunch of films that don't even have the Wikipedia linkability to it, that sort of thing. So why don't we start with you? Your thoughts on Mr. Gad?
I really like him in general, and I really liked him in this.
Okay.
I thought that he was, again, I kind of think that he was the right amount of goofy and lovable. So he is definitely...
And creepy.
And creepy. He plays Jamie, a.k.a. Jake Gyllenhaal's brother. And so he is weird and he is uncomfortable. He's going through a divorce. Right. And he just kind of embodied all of that to me. I feel like I know that guy, where it's like he wants so badly to be a part of all the fun, but he doesn't really know how to be, and then he gets bitter about it.
Yeah, well said. He was wealthy at the beginning of the film. Didn't he sell his company or something to that effect? Made like made a lot of money, and his girlfriend or fiance was really but then they got divorced shortly thereafter, whatever that was. Yeah. When he goes through the divorce, he ends up in Jake's life because it's like, hey, can I crash somewhere? It's funny, even Jake Gyllenhaal's character said at one point, it's like, why are you here? You own a home. Why are you in my house? He's like, well, because you're my brother. I want to be with you. There was one creepy scene where I thought, I don't know. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
I sure do. If we're not talking about the same one, then you're a crazy person. It's the scene where Josh is getting off to watching his brother, watching a homemade porno starring his brother.
That's right. So him and Anne's character they were filming themselves making love, consensual love. And Josh said that he was focusing on his girlfriend, not on him.
Not okay. There's nothing okay about that in any way, shape, or form.
That's so weird to me. Now, look, the thing is, that kind of stuff has probably happened.
Definitely.
Yeah. So if you can think of it, if the writers of this film can think of it, they probably heard a story or something. Or it happened to somebody on the film crew or the writing crew. The fact that they came up with this scenario tells me this has probably happened to somebody at some part. And to be caught doing it. And what I like too is that Jake's character acted accordingly. They actually kicked him out of the house.
Yeah, that was a very realistic, parts of that were a very realistic scene to me. Again, I think it was kind of absurd, but you're right that it probably did happen. I thought that Jake's character, his response to it was reasonable. And I was like, okay, yes, this is like the logical next step after you catch your brother jerking it to you. Like, whew, not okay.
But he was focusing on Anne Hathaway, which is fair, which I understand.
Yeah, I just need to take one moment right now to shout out Anne Hathaway's boobs. I know that we have not gotten into her as a character yet, but shout out to those thingies because they're beautiful.
Oh yeah, well, we could talk more on it for sure. There's no cap limit on talking about. We certainly don't want to objectify any woman on this show.
I would never do that.
Good. But it's funny, we're talking about Blood Diamond. My co-host and I at the time, we were talking about how gorgeous Jennifer Connelly is in that episode. And I was like, I got to the point, like, sorry if it sounds like we're objectifying this lovely woman, but at the same time, we're just men, and she's beautiful. And we've also mentioned that Brad Pitt is a handsome, beautiful man. So it goes both ways. So we've given fair play where applicable. And Jake Gyllenhaal.
With Love and Other Drugs, I feel like the movie objectifies her way more than you and I ever could. Right. She is naked in it. I just mentioned that. You know, you get to see her lovely, lovely boobies. But in addition to that, there are shots where she's like holding her leg up and you can just see the bottom of her dirty foot. It felt very Quentin Tarantino-y to me. Like, the reason that I am currently looking at the bottom of her foot is because we all know that that's a fetish. It felt like it was fetishizing her as a movie.
You know, it's funny. I didn't catch the feet, meaning I saw the feet, but
there were two feet scenes.
That's, you know, that's funny. Good catch, because it is a real fetish.
The camera lingers on that. It's not like you just like see her foot for a second and you're like, okay, there was a foot. The camera was shoving her foot in my face. Her foot was right here, and I had to look at it. There
are, of course, usually it's men. Let's be honest, but there are foot fetishes out there, and I suspect. I suspect there are probably men who looked at that scene and had it on pause. I'm not even joking.
Yeah. Honestly, I was examining her foot during that scene. I'm not into feet, but she has quite beautiful feet.
Oh,
I can't even criticize. She doesn't have weird. There's a lot of weird looking feet in the universe. They're fine. Yeah. I thought that she had lovely feet.
I'm going to tell you something. I've never ever said this before ever on a podcast, but I feel safe to do it with you. I actually have nice feet.
Tell me more.
I know. Stop. I'll have to take a picture. No. Well, I mean, I'm happy to share that, but I'm really proud of my feet. I don't have any hair on my feet. My toes are all like the proper symmetrical.
They're
all straight
correctly.
They go from big toe to little toe. You know, they have the proper slope. There's no one toe's not. You know how sometimes the big toe's neighbor can be taller than the big toe. When I arch my foot, I get the proper bone structure in the where the bones come up. I know. I should have been a foot model. I'm too old for now, maybe, but I've always said my feet are pretty good.
I one time had as long as we're sharing things,
sure,
we don't ever share. One time I was walking down the street and some guy came up to me and was like, "Are you a model?" And I was like, "No." And he goes, "I'm a photographer. Can I take your picture?" And I was like, "Okay, I guess so." And so he like takes my picture. I always wear really weird, wacky shoes. And he goes, "Oh, you have such interesting shoes. Can I take a picture of your shoes?" Oh. And I was like, "Sure." And then he was like, "Oh, well, can we just take your shoes off and put them next to your feet?" And I was like, "Oh, it's a foot fetish guy." And he's trying to take pictures. And I was like, "I have to go. Bye."
Yeah.
I almost got foot fetished.
You almost got foot fetished. Yeah, that is, I didn't think that happened, but I guess your evidence that kind of stuff happens where you're a model. Can I take a picture? Okay. Well, at least he asked.
I'm going to tell another story. The first times that I was on the internet, like interacting with other people, one of the first websites for doing that, other than, messenger sorts of things. So other than AIM, other than all of those things, and chat rooms, one of the first interactive websites was hotornot.com.
Oh, yeah. I remember those.
And I was on hotornot.com. The number one message that I would get is, "Can I see your feet? Can I smell your dirty socks?"
No.
All the time. That was the number one message.
So I guess the foot fetish is bigger than we even thought. This is crazy.
Oh, yeah.
I don't get it. I just don't get it. Well, I have nice feet. So if you're listening to this and you have a foot fetish, I guess I should have an OnlyFans. Only feet fans. Oh, man. Okay, well, we're going to do some more body talk. I love it.
Non sequitur.
No, well, yes and no. This movie is very sexual. Let's just be honest.
Yes.
It elicits, definitely elicits conversations. Okay, next we have Hank Azaria playing Dr. Stan Knight. So he's one of these doctors that, of course, both Jake Gyllenhaal's character and Gabriel Mock's character, vie for his attention for Pfizer and Zoloft, were the two for antidepressants. And he is a doctor that gets hooked on the blue pill later in the film, more or less, and all of his buddies. Yeah. So what did you think of Hank in general? I mean, of course, you know who he is, a Simpsons voice actor.
I am a huge fan of The Simpsons.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to remember the first time that I saw Hank Azaria in a movie. Okay. It was probably, what was it, Eulogy? Is he in Eulogy? And I fell in love with him as an actor. I was like, he understands comedic timing, and he does that in spades in Love and Other Drugs. His comedic timing is perfect. When he is being a serious doctor, he is being a serious doctor. When he is being a weirdo creep doctor, he is being a weirdo creep doctor. And you can feel all of those beats, and he creates that so perfectly. He's got to be in my top favorite actors of all time.
Oh, wow. Nice. That's great praise. Yeah, he's obviously extremely talented. Voice acting, believe it or not, is a lot harder than people think. It's to be able to do, and not just to do your own voice and acting with just your natural voice. He does voices, which is crazy. Of course, he does famously, he did Apu, but he retired Apu. I have my own thoughts about that. But we'll leave it at that. We probably have the same thoughts.
I think so too.
Yeah, I'm sure he does too, quite frankly. He still famously does Chief Wiggum and Moe from The Simpsons, very main roles there, and other various voices. But you're right, he was in Eulogy in 2004. Funny, I remember him, first time I saw him off The Simpsons was he was in the movie Heat.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And then he did The Birdcage, Gross Point Blank, Godzilla, Mystery Men. Remember he had that role in Mystery Men? And then Mystery Alaska, same year, funny enough. The hockey film with he was a dodgeball.
I forgot about that movie, Mystery Alaska. Yeah.
So Along Came Polly, Nobody's Perfect. And then just tons of films. Yeah, he's fantastic. Great voice actor. So somebody like that would just know the comedy beats. And he was even kind of subdued, really. He was more doctor than anything else in this film. But when he got hooked on the blue pill and being a bit of a party animal, it was kind of fun to watch him do that.
I like that his character was kind of a nerdy doctor who wanted to have a party side. The way to woo him. So again, the pharmaceutical salesmen are both trying to woo him over to their side. They want to sell him the drugs. They want him to be pushing their drug. The way to do that is to teach him how to get women. The stereotype is that all women are like fawning over doctors, and he is so defunct in that ability that he cannot get a single woman. So he needs these pharmaceutical sales guys to teach him how to nag women into liking him.
Yeah, well, it worked.
Yeah, it did.
All right, next on our bill was Oliver Platt. Are you familiar with Oliver Platt and any of his work?
Can't even think of which character that is.
Oh, okay. So
that
Oliver
name
Platt
is not ringing a bell right now.
So he was Jamie's regional manager. He was the kind of overweight guy.
That's right. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Yes.
It's funny. Now, the reason why I know him, this is kind of a long way around why I know him. So I'm a huge Young Guns fan. The films Young Guns 1 and 2.
Yep.
It kind of came out when I was a teenager. Both films, just loved the film. So every actor that kind of came from those films, I've kind of have followed their careers. Well, Stand By Me, I guess, was officially introduced to Kiefer and Lost Boys, but Young Guns really was the films that I fell in love with Kiefer. And then Kiefer went on to do a movie called Flatliners. And I don't know if you ever saw the movie Flatliners. So Oliver Platt is in Flatliners. So I've always been, I'm one of those 6 degrees of actors. So I've always known Oliver from Flatliners. I have a weird relationship with him as an actor. I don't know if I like him or not. It's hard to explain. There's something about him that I'm not sure. He's a good actor, but there's also something about him. I don't know what it is. Have you seen The Bear on Disney or Hulu?
No, I have heard good things.
Oh, everything you've heard is true. It's amazing.
Okay, good. Okay.
It's amazing. He has a recurring role in that. Granted, he does a great job, but again, you're like, I don't know how I feel about this. There's something about him. So good actor. I just don't know if I'm a fan of his acting. If that makes, I recognize his ability as an actor, but it's hard to say if I like him as an actor. Isn't that weird? Do you ever get that with some actors?
I think that makes a lot of sense, and I could definitely see that. I don't think I'm super familiar with his filmography. I just went and looked him up a little bit, and the thing that I remember him the most from actually is Pieces of April.
Oh wow, okay.
I saw Flatliners. It's funny. I don't even remember him being in Flatliners. So I must be kind of mid with him if I can't remember him being in that movie, you know?
Right. Yeah, that's a fun film, by the way. Great film. Very 90s.
And I'm with you on Kiefer Sutherland.
He's great. Yeah, he's great.
Absolutely. And Stand By Me was my first introduction to him.
Oh, yeah. I love that film. But it was because of my fandom of Kiefer that I watched 24. I was the guy, first episode, first season. I'm like, Kiefer's doing a TV show about what? I don't care. I'm watching this TV show, and I was so happy it was successful. Yeah,
I did exactly the same thing.
Awesome. I could sense some simpatico with me and you, so there you go.
Yes.
All right. Well, let's see if our simpatico continues. Oh, actually, I forgot to mention my feelings of Josh Gad. Let me just go back a little bit. You talked highly of him, which I don't know if I'm surprised, but I'm not sure how I felt about him. He did a great job playing what he played. Maybe that's part of what it was with this role in this film, because he was so not irredeemable, but he was just like, oh my gosh, I couldn't have this guy as a brother. He's creepy, he's loud, he's clingy. Everything about him is, because when I watch films, I try to like, how would I be either with that person or around that person, or if I am this person. So if he was in my world, if this character existed in my world, I'd be like, can you not
Get
live
out.
here? Yeah, well, I love you as a brother, but you're not living with me. And that's kind of when Jake even said, like, why are you here? I kind of understood. I kind of got it. It would have taken a lot less than him watching me make love to my wife on video camera. But yeah, but again, he's obviously a very popular actor today. Like, he does a lot of work today. Okay. Now I'm going to be curious to hear what you think of Anne Hathaway and what you thought of her in this film.
First, we'll start with her boobs. They're incredible. I have to get it out of the way so that my mind is no longer distracted. She is stunningly gorgeous. I find her to just be one of the most beautiful people in the world. And this movie, I think, was on the tail end of Brokeback Mountain, right? She had just done some nude scenes in Brokeback Mountain, and I was very impressed with that. More so, what I'm impressed with is what she has done since Love and Other Drugs came out. So she was in the movie Colossal. And I think that was the first time that I really realized how much I respected her ability to act.
Oh, okay.
She has a girl next door, and yet like a freaky kind of girl next door sort of vibe to her that she is able to portray in very mild ways. She'll like turn a teeny tiny little switch, and all of a sudden she'll become somebody incredibly different, all within one moment. And I'm very impressed by that. That said, I do think that she frequently plays kind of the same character, almost like Judy Greer, where it's like, I know what Judy Greer is going to be. Anne Hathaway, I think, flexes those skills a little bit more. And in general, I absolutely love her. In this, she felt kind of boring to me. And I hated to say that. I hate to say that I want to lead with her boobs, because to me, that was the most exciting part. I would like that to not be the most exciting part. I would like to be able to say, wow, I was really impressed with her ability to play somebody who has early onset tremors and is struggling a lot. But I just never really got the feeling that she connected with the character.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I know she would probably tell you, again, because I've listened to the audiobook and I've seen some of the interviews, that she did connect with. So it's interesting how you
That's what I've heard.
Yeah. So it's interesting that as a viewer, you might not have seen the connection she felt.
Yeah.
So I'll say this about Anne Hathaway. This is tough because I don't want to be contrarian and just or
please,
disagree.
Fight me about it.
It's funny. My wife doesn't like her either. Usually my wife's not really one to like have any real feelings. She likes movies and TV, but she doesn't have any real feelings on certain things. Like, I try to get out of her, like, who do you find handsome? I always want to know.
Yeah.
What? I don't. It's like, you could say. So we're actually watching. Have you ever seen the show, The Morning Show? It's on Apple TV.
No.
It's really good. It has like Jennifer Aniston.
Well, Jennifer Aniston is my girl crush, so
yeah. Well, you got to see the show. It's really good.
Yeah,
it's really good. It's Reese Witherspoon's in it as well. The fourth season has John Hamm. He's one of the guest stars for the fourth season. So John Hamm's on the screen. I'm like, okay. I'm like, honey, is he good looking? She goes, yes. I'm like, okay. Finally, I kind of wanted to, but she got it out a little bit too quickly for my liking. But but she did say, yes, that is a good looking man. I'm like, okay, good, okay. Anyways, I say all this because regarding that flip side of it, she doesn't like Anne Hathaway, and I don't know why. I haven't really asked her. See, I feel the same way. I'm sure she's a lovely person. There is one story that Ed does share that I'll share at the end of this episode, of course, the audiobook, that Ed very rarely says anything bad about anyone. He kind of has the philosophy of, I don't have anything nice to say about someone, I don't say it. He only kind of ripped on one actor so far throughout his whole book. That was Matthew Broderick when he during Glory. That's a very fascinating story. If you're interested, you can go back and listen to my episode on Glory, because we share what he said about
that.
Yeah, he spills the tea on Matthew Broderick. He does share a little bit of a story. The little bit that he shares, when we'll get to it, it kind of aligns with the feeling I get about it. Something I don't know how to say this. Okay, you know Reese Witherspoon, right?
Yep.
So she seems like, because I think actors and or actresses, sometimes I don't think we don't see or don't see really kind of who they are. I think you can only act so much. I think sometimes we kind of get a sniff of
glimpse
of just what they might be like. because it's just easier to be you with a different name in the film. It's just easier to, like, I am Ryan with Parkinson's. So here I go shaking, but I'm Ryan with Parkinson's. I have lines. I'm Ryan with a sword in my hand. I'm going to fight some trolls in Lord of the Rings. You know, like, I would still act and try to be emotive and act properly, but I think at the end of the day, you're kind of just maybe still a little bit of who you are in those roles. So Anne seems to me to be a little bit of a hoity-toity. I don't know if I'd be good enough for her. I don't think I would measure up, even though maybe I do, but I feel like I'm like, I'm too conservative for you, or I'm too this for you. I kind of have a feeling that she would look down on me, and I don't know why I get that feeling.
So I actually thought that there was a very realistic scene in this movie, and I think it might be a little bit of what you're describing with her.
Okay.
So the scene that really impacted me very deeply of this, or when it comes to Anne Hathaway's character anyway,
right,
is that her character and Jake Gyllenhaal's character are having their first fight. The reason for this fight is because Jake Gyllenhaal's character lied to his mother about the number of prescriptions that he sold. He exaggerated the number. He said, I sold, 2,000 when really he only sold 1,000, but really 1,000 was still a good number. Anne Hathaway's character is like, well, why did you lie to your mom? Did you lie just to make things sound better? If you're lying to make things sound better to your mom, how do I know that you're not just lying to make things sound better to me? Fair. And of course, what we all know that she's experiencing in those moments is she's experiencing this idea of, well, maybe he's saying it's okay to me. It's okay that I have Parkinson's, when really he doesn't feel okay about the fact that I have Parkinson's. And she's so paranoid about that. So we get to see kind of the paranoia of her character. What was so interesting about the scene, though, to me, is that she very quickly shifts from being pissed off at him. She's tearing him down. She's saying, you're an asshole for lying like this. And then she very, very quickly shifts to saying, oh, you're so smart and capable and talented. And it felt extremely real to me to have a woman shift so quickly, so rapid fire from going, oh, you're a shithead, to going, oh, let me maternal instinct you and tell you how wonderful you are because I'm the one who just broke you down. So now I'm going to be the one to build you up. And to me, that was what sold her character. And I agree, that's a totally hateable characteristic and perhaps too close to the real Anne Hathaway. She doesn't seem, and again, that's just me, that's total conjecture. Yeah. She might be a complete sweetheart. But
she might be.
It feels very, very real to have a woman behaving in that very negative way. And either that means she's the best actress in the world, or it means she's not so great in real life.
So, yeah, I don't want to begrudge Anne. I don't know her from Adam. She could just be the most loveliest person in the world and a great actress. But you think about people like Jack Nicholson and Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. A lot of their personas seem to be there, and for better or for worse, we can connect to those personas or personalities. So I'm not saying anyone's evil. Like if you play a murderer, I don't think Anthony Hopkins is a murderer because he played one of Silence of the Lambs. But I think he's probably highly intelligent and very good at how he speaks and articulates things. Because when I see him in interviews, he is that way. That's what I mean. Like he's very good at speaking and enunciating and just being Anthony Hopkins. So now you just put a mask on his face or have him eat someone's face off. That's the acting part of it, but he's still Anthony Hopkins. So it's hard to explain, but I think everyone kind of feels that way with the characters or actors. That's why when we go on message boards, aging myself, when we go on Reddit or whatever, and they're talking about certain actors, there's people that resonate with certain personalities, because I think that's just the human experience. There's certain personalities that we'll experience when we watch films. We're like, I don't like that person. I don't know why, but something's not resonating with me. It's not sticking. And I think she's just that way. However, ... I again recognize I know she's a good actress, but I totally agree with you that something about her in this film was, I don't know, from the shaking of her hand to show she has Parkinson's, it almost felt, I don't know if this is Ed's fault. He's a very good director, but I don't know if this was his fault, where it almost felt like, hey, remind the audience she has Parkinson's. It felt like some of the stuff was just like, shake a little bit. She has Parkinson's. Yeah, there he is shaking her hand, dropping the dish on the ground, whatever it is, or
she can't open the Pop-Tarts.
Right, that's right. Like, so I felt a little inserted just to remind the audience she has early onset because she's very young. I think her character and the actress at the time was 26, 24, 26. She's very young in this film. So this is uncommon for people this young to have Parkinson's, though people do. it was hard for me to be Jake. So that's what I mean. I insert myself in these films. Like if I'm the lead and then I'm the character Jamie Randall played by Jake, I wouldn't be fawning over Anne. And so I was almost confused and bewildered that Jake's character just was enamored by Anne Hathaway. And I think it's a combination of maybe her breasts. She is pretty. But I was like, there's Judy Greer, the lovely receptionist who seems so cute and sweet. Just date her. Like your life would be so less complicated.
I will say there is one explanation to it, and I agree. I did not understand it at all. I was like, this guy would not be interested in this girl in real life. However, the brother character, Josh, he does make a comment at one point, and he says, she rejected you, and that's why you want her. And that is human nature. Anytime that we can't have what we want, it's the take the toy away from one kid and the other kid is playing with it. And now all of a sudden the first kid is like, I need that toy and I need that toy right now. First kid didn't care about that toy to begin with. I do think that that's what's going on. That said, I don't need a whole dang movie about that. I don't need that whole concept to be stretched into a rom-com.
Yeah, good point. That's the thing. You're right. Because Jake's character, Jamie, he's a ladies' man. He gets anyone he wants. And now he comes across someone, not only is someone that has rejected his advances, but she has issues where she shouldn't be, quote unquote, chased after because by her own admission, we've got this debilitating disease. It's only going to get worse. Are you going to be here to wipe my butt when it gets worse? And Jake, to his credit, becomes this knight in shining armor, and which I liked his transformation. Don't get me wrong. I just kind of wish it was Judy Greer playing Maggie and maybe Anne playing Cindy, and I might have been more on board because I would have chased
more
Judy
engaged.
Greer. Because I would have chased Judy. I'm like, yeah, she's such a sweetheart. Yeah. Oh, she deserves this, and I feel that way about Judy, and I don't feel that way about Anne. So my biases are playing into my enjoyment of the film.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. So breasts, amazing. So if you're wondering, folks, Anne Hathaway is naked a lot.
Yeah.
Like, and Jake too, all but his penis. Like everything of Jake is shown. His butt, his body. So like it is like this is the type of film that you don't watch on the plane because everyone behind you will see just how much nudity. Have you ever watched a film on the plane and there's a nude scene that comes on? You're like, oh shoot, I'm not watching this because of the nudity.
Do you know what my worst one ever was? It was not too long. I forget what year this movie came out. So this will probably give an answer to that question. But
sure.
Have you ever seen the movie Stoker?
Stoker?
Yes.
No.
There is a shower masturbation scene in that movie.
Stroker?
Yeah, it sure felt like it, let me tell you. With a female character masturbating in the shower. And it is very graphic. And there's a lot of, anytime that you're not seeing body stuff, you're seeing her face in close up. And I was sitting on an aisle seat watching this movie. And then I realized that the scene was happening. And I had never seen the movie before. So I was like, oh no. And now the scene is happening. And I'm like, well, I can't change it because if I change it, everybody knows that I'm aware of the fact. So I was just like looking down like, oh God, everybody can see what I'm doing and everybody knows that I'm watching this movie. And I couldn't believe that was just available on an airplane. I was like, what are they doing to me right now?
That is funny.
Even other drugs is another one I would not want to watch on an airplane.
No, there's a lot of nudity and a lot of sex. Stoker, I'm just looking it up now. It's funny. Yeah, I thought it was just going to be some lame film, but it's produced by Ridley Scott. Yeah. And it stars Nicole Kidman. Dermot Mulroney, speaking of Young Guns, he played a character in Young Guns, the first film.
I'm blanking on the director's name, but this is his first English language film. What's the director's name?
Park Chan-wook.
Yes. So this is his first English language film. He's an incredible director. It's a very controversial movie, but I like it a lot.
Yeah, he directed Old Boy, which I loved.
Yeah, yep.
All joking aside, I'm actually legitimately interested in this. So
you should come and join me on my channel to talk about it. I'm going to force you to watch it. You want to come join me?
Is this a real invite?
This is a real invite.
I'm not editing this out.
This is one of my favorite movies. I have a custom poster of this movie because I love it so much. So I would love to have an excuse to talk about it. And there's nobody I can imagine doing that better with than you.
Oh my goodness. Be still my heart. You know what? I'm doing it. This is fantastic. I'm looking forward to that. Awesome. Okay. Awesome. That's right. Now you got me all discombobulated. I got my brain back.
All right, just think about Anne Hathaway's boobies.
Yeah, Anne Hathaway's boobs. Anne Hathaway's boobs. Okay. All right. It's not that we're saving the best for last, but in my opinion, I think I am saving the best for last regarding the cast. Jake, is it Gyllenhaal? Is it a hard G or soft G? I never know.
I say Gyllenhaal, but I am regularly pronouncing things wrong, so I have no idea if that's correct.
I'll say the hard G. You'll say the soft G. That way, at least he can walk away happy to some degree. You know,
somebody got it right.
So this is his character here, and we forgot to do this for Anne Hathaway, but I think we hit everything. Oh yeah, we should mention this about Anne Hathaway. Sorry, she lost weight. Specifically, she lost even more weight for this role to reflect the physical changes often experienced by Parkinson's patients. So she lost even more weight. She looked fat. I hate to say it sounds terrible. Again, I'm not trying to objectify her, but she looks great. I don't know. Whatever you did. So yeah, if you're dating someone with Parkinson's, they're going to look great. No, I'm just joking. Don't get mad at me. Regarding her nude scenes, she says they were part of the story and the character, and I approached them with dignity. That's what she said about that. And I think she did. I don't think anything was salacious, or it wasn't even gratuitous. It's just a lot of. It's just a lot of flesh.
It was quite classy for what it was.
Yeah. Oh, she also spent time with an actress named Lucy. It's either Ruckus or Rusis, who has Parkinson's and appears in the film to help prepare for the role. So, like you said, she really involved herself in the film process. She wanted to. So maybe what we saw, even though they might have been insertions, to be fair to Anne and Ed, they did want to show these are probably real struggles that people have. I'm sure Lucy probably told Anne, I have a hard time opening Pop-Tarts or things like that.
But I guess it's challenging for me because there are movies that do a really great job with that. Like I think it's The Kids Are All Right with Julianne Moore. That felt much more sincere to the struggle with disease than this did. I just feel like Anne's disease was an afterthought. And I think that the real story lays with Jake Gyllenhaal's character. So perhaps the reason that Anne Hathaway's disease is kind of the back plot is because it was intended to be the back plot.
It seemed weird. It did seem weird. And I don't mean, I agree. We're talking about Jake now, but I agree with the subplot or the B plot or C plot even of her. Okay, I think what it was for her at the end of the day was she had this disease and she didn't feel worthy to be dated by anyone. She couldn't believe someone as good looking as Jake would be after, like, why do you want me? I don't want to be loved because this love will end and because I'm going to end and my body will end and you're not going to love me anymore. So to mitigate all that, I'm just going to stop everything now. Instead of feeling any kind of love and happiness now, I'm just not going to feel anything because I don't want to be disappointed later. That was her whole philosophy.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Okay. So Jake Gyllenhaal played Jamie Randall. He's the smooth-talking, ambitious pharmaceutical rep who transitions from casual relationships to genuine love for Anne Hathaway's character, Maggie. He also spent time with Jamie Reedy, the author of the book the film is based on, to understand the nuances of a pharmaceuticals rep's life. So there was some of that research that he did there. I like this quote here. So he joked, of course, being sarcastic. I believe this was sarcastic. He joked about the chemistry and intensity of his scenes with Hathaway, stating, quote, "The hardest thing has been pretending to be turned on by Anne Hathaway." That was the hardest part of his acting. What a challenge. See, speaking as a man, you understand this, of course, too. But if it was my job to lay next to Anne Hathaway throughout the day, like, not a hard day's work. Well, excuse the pun. Yes. There was an actor, and I forget which actor it was. You might have heard this quote. So I wish I could quote the actor because I've brought this up before. So one day I have to research this. But there's a famous actor who told his co-lead that was female they were going to do a love scene, and the actor said, "I apologize if I get hard," and then he says, "I also apologize if I don't."
Oh, yes.
Yeah. That's a great way of looking at the male psyche. I hate that. Being a man, I get it. So he's like, hey, you're a naked, beautiful woman. And like, we're acting, but if it's like, I'm sorry that it got stimulated, but I'm also sorry if it doesn't. Don't read into it if I don't.
It's funny that you say that because actually Anne Hathaway's character has a line in this movie that says something along the lines of, all men care about is performance, and yet they have an appendage that won't work if they care about performance.
Yes, it's called performance anxiety. I would know nothing of this thing, but
yeah, what a line that was.
It's a real thing. It's a reason why it's written into movies, TV shows. It's a reason why, because it's such a reflection on the quote unquote the man, testosterone and aging and all these things. It's tricky because not that women have the advantage, but to some degree there's an advantage because you can just say, "This feels great, honey. Oh, you're amazing. I'm loving this," but I don't know, really, to a certain degree. Of course, we don't get the details of how the female body does show some signs and stuff, of course. but the point is, to our under 18 listeners, let's just that being said, with the male, it's kind of the thing. It's like, oh, you don't love me? Oh, you're not happy with me? It's like, no,
I
it's
don't
not
look
that.
good today.
Yeah, I don't
look good today.
This is where the reverse happens for men. It's like, no, sometimes we can be tired. Sometimes we can just be not in the mood because
you're not allowed to be.
That's right. So men have
you're not allowed.
What's this word? The reverse of
like an expectation of.
That's right. That you must always be good to go. Men would put it in anything. Well, maybe when I was 20. For sure, and lower, yeah. Anyways, revealing, I might have to edit some aside. People might think, Brian, what's your issue? I'm fine. Everything's fine. Oh, yeah. So, what do you think of Jake as an actor in his time in this film?
He's amazing. He's such a good actor. He's so innocent and yet informed at all times. Like he's masculine and yet lovable at all times. And I love that. Again, in the same kind of way that I felt with Anne, where generally I love her, I wasn't a huge fan of him in this movie. I understand that his character was supposed to be this body guy who's like real in your face, and he's supposed to be like, I can get all the chicky poos that I want. And that was kind of the character that he was supposed to be. You mentioned his character arc a little bit earlier. I don't like his character arc at all, and I don't like how he played it. I hate the end of the movie so much.
Oh, wow.
He starts out as this total ladies' man, and he's a salesman. He's a salesman through and through. He starts out as an electronics salesman. He moves on to be a pharmaceutical salesman. He sells himself to ladies. He sells himself to doctors. He sells himself to his brother. He sells himself to his family. He is a salesman. There is no one woman in the entire world that is ever going to change that for a guy. Like, there's not. And the end of this movie, to me, is him turning into just a pushover. He admits that he thinks that he's a piece of shit. He admits that he basically putting on a mask at all times. And then he's like, oh, well, I just want to be with you. He gives up a job opportunity. He decides to go to med school because he wants so badly to help her with her problems. I hated it. There was a scene someplace in the middle of the movie where it was more towards the end of the movie. The two of them together go to an unconvention where they learn all about Parkinson's. Anne Hathaway's character has a great experience at this convention. She's learning all about, she's like, oh my goodness, everything is so great. I have, my people, they're still living their lives even though they have Parkinson's.
That's right. Yeah.
I can still live my life. Jake's character gets very overwhelmed at this convention because he meets an older guy whose wife also has Parkinson's disease.
Yeah.
And he says to this guy, he says, do you have any advice for me? And the guy says, pack your bags and get out now. Pack your bags and leave a nice note, I think is what he actually says, which is even crazier because that's saying get out without any hassle. Like, don't put yourself through it. Just get out. I will be honest with you. I wanted Jake Gyllenhaal's character to do that. I didn't think that his character was strong enough. I didn't think that he gave enough oomph to his character for us as film watchers to see that sort of a character arc. He falls apart for me because I either need him to be full of strength or full of weakness, and he was neither. He was someplace in the in-between. It was really the end of the movie. I didn't hate him throughout the entire thing. It was just the end of the movie. And I mean, I can blame that on writing as much as I can blame that on his acting style. But I think if his acting style had been more forceful in the beginning, perhaps I would have fallen more into this love affair that is the end of the movie. And instead, I did not. And I wanted them to not end up together. I wanted it to be a realistic movie. And honestly, a realistic movie is that guy would never wipe Anne Hathaway's butt. He wouldn't.
No. You are very much the same page. The Hollywood ending was very Hollywood ending.
Yes.
We're in love. I'm going to med school. It's tied up all these bows. He's going to use his great skills to finish med school. They're going to maybe have a kid together. Yeah, it was almost a too clean. I don't begrudge Ed for writing. I believe he wrote this film as well, with the book. They drew from the book. But it was Hollywood ending. It was a feel-good ending. I think a braver, and Ed's a very good, and I love him, but I think a braver choice would have been, like you said, that
leave a nice note.
Yeah, we should have seen it where it did happen, and then we could see like later on in their life that Anne could still, like, they could still find some sort of, it's not like their lives would be miserable. We could still see some sort of like Anne did go find another guy that treats her, and he's a little bit less handsome, let's say, a little bit like somebody that could be just a little bit more, I don't know, looks like me, I don't know, more dad bod or something. You remember when they met at the restaurant where she had a boyfriend?
Yep.
That could have been near the ending of the film, that type of scenario where they do meet later in life and she is okay. And you could even show her that she is a little bit more shaking, but she seems to be with a really decent guy. And the guy's like, hi, nice to meet you. And you can sense with this dialogue that she's in a good place. She's with somebody who's just not a gigolo. Something to that effect. So they're not together. It would have made more sense had they not been together.
We regularly make these decisions in our love life. So our love lives as humans is always, do I want stability or do I want passion? In order to love somebody, you have to hate them also. You can choose either to have ultimate love, which requires you to have ultimate hate as well, or you can choose to have somebody that you feel very mid about and that you're totally fine and they support you in the ways that you need to be supported. And maybe you guys agree on all the parenting decisions together, but also they're not somebody who really riles you up. And I am a very firm believer that there are those two different types of relationships. This movie, I don't feel like did a very good job of showing either of those types of relationships. I think that despite the fact that Jake's character and Anne's character, they were clearly passionate about each other.
Right.
We don't really ever get to see the hate towards each other. We get to see the self-loathing. They didn't feel like a very well-rounded couple. The logical ending would have been he leaves her and that's the end.
Yeah.
The comedy ending would have been like she ends up with Josh, the brother.
Don't say that.
Like that would have been the comedy movie ending.
Right.
And then instead we got, I think you described it perfectly, the Hollywood movie ending, which is, okay, now they're together and they're happy and he's going to do great things for the world because he's a great guy magically and she's a great girl magically. And now look at how great they are together.
Right. I think we nailed it. I think we made a better film. We're not off the marker here. I feel bad because I think all of Ed's films have been pretty high on the ratings, pretty fantastic, very little to critique. And I don't know where this was mismanaged, but here's some of the criticism. So there was praise. Los Angeles Times says it's refreshingly grown-up romantic comedy. The Real Review says it's an adult romance that sidesteps genre contrivances, which I then disagree with because we just finished saying that it did end with the genre.
Yeah.
They got back, they split apart, they got back together, and it was like literally the ending was the only thing missing was the rain.
It was like exposition to the extreme at the end, where it was like, okay, now we have to explain to you all of the things that are happening.
The big impassioned speech moment that we often. It's usually the guy that has to give it to the woman, like, I'm this thing and I'm that thing. And the woman's like, no. It's like, fine, you convinced me. It was a big speech at the end. But here are some criticisms. I think we touched on this. Struggles with tonal balance, veering between comedy, romance, and social commentary. East Bay Express called this maudlin and repellent. Oof, that's a little harsh, I think. I don't think it was repellent. But it did make a little bit at the box office. I think it had to do with the star power, quite frankly. This is probably a date night movie. I wonder how many people went on this date, a husband, wife, or boyfriend, girlfriend, went and like, wow, there's a lot of nudity.
Went home and took some Viagra.
Oh yeah, we didn't really talk about the Viagra. So the Viagra was the big selling point in the film. This was discovered in the mid-90s, rightfully so. It takes the world by storm. So we see a little bit of the how the drugs elevate people's sex life, parties, and it actually helps other things. So it's definitely a plug for Viagra, which is also a name brand. So good for Viagra, and for the men that use Viagra. It opened number 6 in the U.S., earning almost 10 million its first weekend. But as much as we talked about Jake and Anne and their acting, good and bad, they both received nominations at the Golden Globes for Best Actor and Actress.
Oh, neither one, though, I assume.
Neither one, but they got nominated. So, I mean, there's only 5 or 6 that are nominated per year.
Yeah, that's great.
Ed, to his credit, he does... a lot of actors that work with him have won Oscars, like Denzel Washington's won an Oscar under him.
Yeah.
Composers and other Oscars have been won under Ed. Ed himself actually won a Best Picture because he produced Shakespeare in Love, by the way. So he won a Best Picture Oscar, yeah. Here's some trivia. You probably saw this too. It's pretty obvious that the Parkinson's convention you mentioned featured real patients and professionals living with the disease. So what we saw, the testimonies, what we saw, they were real people living with the disease. So whether the stories were them themselves, these again were stories or experiences or testimonials that we would suspect people with Parkinson's would share. And the last speaker at that convention was Lucy, who inspired Hathaway's portrayal of Maggie. As we mentioned, Hathaway and Gyllenhaal's on-screen chemistry stemmed from their friendship and prior collaboration, of course, in Brokeback Mountain. That's it for trivia. So let's get into what you said you're excited to do. Was we're going to listen to Ed and in his own voice, his experiences on the film, and it'll give us a couple talking points.
I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma on November 12th, 2008. On that same day, I received the green light from 20th Century Fox to start casting Love and Other Drugs. That I might be directing a movie about illness while fighting an illness was an irony that didn't go unnoticed. A very good script, Pharma, written by Charles Randolph, had been sent to me by Leonardo DiCaprio's manager. He told me that Leo liked the script, but felt it needed a rewrite, and asked if Marshall and I would be willing to do that with him in mind. Having had such a happy experience with Leo on Blood Diamond, Marshall and I read the script and said yes. We liked the idea of seeing him do a behavioral comedy, and we thought the rest of the world would too. It would also be a nice change of pace for me after the epic dramas I'd been making. But not since about last night had I done a comedy. After finishing our draft, we sent it to Leo's manager, only to learn that Leo had in fact never read the earlier script, knew nothing about the project, and no matter how much he might like this one, was committed to make another movie. Rather than take a hit out on the manager, I sent the script to 2 actors who I thought would be great.
I didn't notice that he fought that disease. Obviously, he won it. He's still alive today. Very interesting that he's now tackling a film about a medical issue film while he's going through this. Yeah. But what I love is that people are, they just lie in Hollywood. Well, they lie everywhere. Oh, yeah, Leo loves it. He loves this. And so poor Ed's like sending this to Leo's camp. Like, oh, okay, we got the script done. What do you think? Yeah. Leo's like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. It's a good script, but I'm already doing another film. I don't know who told you this.
It was a wonderful clip, and the content of that clip was amazing. However, I'm just so distracted by the fact that that was the first time that I've ever heard Ed Zwick's voice. Why does he sound like he's AI? He talks in such a weird monotone that, like,
that's hilarious.
If you had told me that was a computer generated audio for this audiobook, I would have believed you.
That is hilarious.
That's crazy.
That's funny. Don't tell me that stuff now. That's all I'm going to hear.
I ruined it for you. This is exactly why I did not want to listen to any of this other stuff before. I need that reaction. But that's crazy. Also, something that I will give credit to the movie, and it's so nice to hear that Zwick was experiencing that. I've had lots of friends who have had diseases like MS, for example, where they now know they have been in a loving, wonderful relationship with their partner for years and years and years. And now they know that they're going to degenerate. And is their partner going to be there for them during that experience? Is their partner going to wipe their own ass or wipe their ass for them? The answer is almost always no. And you become very protective of yourself. And something that I will absolutely give this movie credit for is that it personifies that voice in a really perfect way. And now knowing that Zwick was probably going through some of his same internal struggles regarding that at the time that he was making this movie, that explains why that's so successful.
Oh, great insight. And I can speak for my wife that, yes, she would be by my side. If she gets MS, I'm kicking her to the curb and finding. No, honey, I love you. Okay, all right. But it's a reality, though. That's why they say in those marriage vows, sickness and health, right? Yeah. But this way, my kids would never forgive me, and not that I wouldn't need their. But if I did that to her, I would lose my kids too. How could my children respect their father who abandons their mothers? There's a lot of different factors at play, but even though
it's
I
a
understand
hard battle, though, being a person supporting somebody. I have dated people with disabilities before, and that is a hard battle, being the person there supporting somebody when they can't support themselves. It's an entirely different form of commitment.
Absolutely. Well, my wife she's very capable, but she actually is, quote unquote, you could say handy capable, because she actually is an amputee. She doesn't have her left arm from the elbow down. She doesn't have a left arm there. And so that is an actual like handicap that you and I don't have any issues with. So I already kind of live with that idea of like there's something different, or something that's, we're going to the mall, or we go jogging together, whatever people look at. That you
adjust for.
Yeah, but there's things she can't do that I help her out with. But the biggest thing she can't do, she always says, she goes, I can't tie my own shoes or do the monkey bars.
No monkey bars for her.
No monkey bars for her.
She's not missing out. I will tell you right now.
I hate the monkey bars.
She's going to be fine never doing the monkey bars.
Well, I feel like it's just pulling out my armpits. That's all it feels like.
When I sat down with Jake Gyllenhaal, I saw qualities in him that surprised me. A piercing intellect, an offbeat humor, and a penchant for wild flights of fancy I'd never seen him do on screen. Then, seeing him in drag on Saturday Night Live, singing a falsetto version of And I'm Telling You, only confirmed that instinct. By the end of the meeting, he was in.
I'm not surprised to hear that about Jake. It tracks. When I see him on film and how he is, and he's done some really dark roles. Like, I don't know if you ever saw Prisoners. Have you ever seen the movie Prisoners?
Yeah.
Because he's the kind of guy, like, I could hang out with this guy. He seems like a cool guy to hang out with.
He does. He's in Nightcrawler, right? That's him. That's a challenging role for him. And I'm actually not a fan at all of Donnie Darko. I hate him in Donnie Darko.
You know what? It's not a great film. I think it's overrated.
No, it's a horrible fucking movie.
Yeah.
It's seeing him flex his kind of like acting chops. And so to hear that it's from that SNL bit that really sold it, that's really cool.
Yeah, but he seems like a cool cat. Like, he just seems like a cool guy.
Anne Hathaway was more cautious. She felt her character's capacity for denial and her fear of the future warranted deeper exploration in the script, and that such a depiction would dovetail nicely with the movie's themes of love and death. Marshall and I loved her notes and did a pass on the script, focusing on them. Jake, who was an extraordinary ally throughout, helped woo her as well. She read the new version and said yes.
Jake says, sure, I'll come on and do it. Anne's like, I got some notes. Okay. All right, that's fair. That's fair.
Kind of shows kind of your read of her earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, where I feel like it's not good enough. Jake's like, I'm on board. Read the script. Cool. Anne's like, I have notes. It's a subtle thing, but it is, I don't know if that's every film she's that way or just this one.
You know, I mean, taking roles like doing Les Miserables, maybe she sees herself as... It's weird because she did Princess Diaries too.
Yeah.
I'm kind of trying to talk myself into it and I can't even do it. If you haven't seen Colossal, you should watch Colossal, and that will give you a better feel of her unique ability to do acting in these sort of traditional female roles that are icky and weird. And it's a kaiju movie, so you will enjoy it. It's
I need to see it. I've never turned off a film. You know how Judy Greer, when I see her in it, I'm always, yay, Judy, she's here. And I'm always like, ugh, I don't know.
It's a slog.
I admit, when I saw The Dark Knight Rises, when she was Catwoman, I'm like, ugh,
yeah.
Like, I wasn't sold that she wasn't a badass. She didn't seem, she might be the greatest humanitarian that ever lived and the sweetest person. I'm just talking about her job as an actress. So don't at me, folks. I'm not saying she's not a great person. I'm just saying there's something about her. I'm not sold yet. I'll keep trying. But
I took Jake to lunch and let him know what was going on. He didn't hesitate.
He's talking about his sickness there. He's let Jake know, hey, just so you know, I'm not doing well. I'm going to get treated for this.
He would do whatever I needed and that he was committed to me and the movie. Annie's eyes filled with tears when I told her, and she responded in the same way Jake had. It was my turn to cry. I couldn't help glancing around, wondering what the other diners thought was happening at our table. I conspicuously didn't tell the studio. I knew they would panic that I might not be insurable to work.
It is nice to see, of course, that you're seeing already that relationship that Jake and Anne have, the trust that they're going to need to do these scenes together. They're already kind of acting like a couple. They're already like, you know, how are we feeling about this? Oh, hey, we're sad for Ed, and they're sad together. So you already see that unity.
I really think that them doing Brokeback Mountain together right before this, because they had probably just wrapped filming on Brokeback Mountain very shortly before starting this, maybe within a year.
Brokeback Mountain was 2005. This was 2010. I know it's weird how fast time goes.
Clearly, I don't remember anything, so I'm just going to go jump back on hotornot.com. My point is, the two of them, I feel like, probably bonded during Brokeback Mountain, which was also a lot of challenging filming stuff. It was Ang Lee as a director, who is an incredible director. You know, the two of them had to go through that experience, so I can understand why they functioned as well as they could as a couple in Love and Other Drugs because of that.
Whatever bond they had on that film definitely carried. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Many times during treatment, while I lay in bed moaning, I confronted the fact that I might never get to make another film. Now that I was back at it, each day felt like stolen time. I had never taken such pleasure in the process. Hours in the van? Sure. Endless production meetings? Yes, please. Shooting in the freezing rain? Bring it on. To be fair, I'd occasionally nod off in my chair while waiting for a lighting setup, and for the first time in countless movies, I learned where to find my trailer so I could nap at lunch.
So just a little insight there. Ed, the person, the director, and the man just saying, and it's sort of cliche, but it's cliche for a reason. Somebody has a second chance of life. They start to appreciate, boy, life is good. Life is good. I'm not going to complain as much. I get to make another film. I get to be cold in the rain. I get to be in the editing room because I thought there was a moment where this wasn't going to be. And so it does change your perspective.
Yeah. The timing is impeccable that he's writing this movie and working on this movie about how it feels when you feel terminal. And he was feeling that at the same time.
Jake and Annie, as she was known to the rest of the cast and crew, were avid and prepared. Rehearsing with them was the highlight of every day. Jake and I had a very amusing and telling interaction early on. The character of Jamie Reedy he was to play was, not to put too fine a point on it, a dog. His job as a Viagra salesman takes second place to his vocation, which is hitting on women. That wasn't Jake's style at all. Not to say he didn't do just fine with women. At the time, he was seeing Reese Witherspoon, but his game wasn't overt. Rather, I knew he would downplay his charm and lead with his innate authenticity. My job was to explode all that, along with any inhibitions he might have had. One night, while the two of us were at dinner, an attractive girl walked past on her way to the bathroom. I noticed Jake eyeing her. "Go for it," I said. "What? Go get her number." "No." "What, you want to play this guy? Let's see you do it." At first, he thought I was joking. When he realized I was serious, he tried to protest, but I gave him my best OG director stare, the kind I've perfected over the years, as if to say, "Are you an actor or aren't you?" Grumbling, shaking his head, he headed for the bathroom. Minutes later, he reappeared. Initially, I couldn't tell by his expression what had happened, but he couldn't hold back a grin for long and tossed the napkin on the table. On it was scrawled a phone number. "Now can I eat my dinner?" he asked. I'm not suggesting my little real-life improv had an overwhelming effect on his performance, or in real life for that matter, but he was damn good in those scenes when he was trying to score with Maggie when he first meets her. Months later, while we were in London for the European premiere, after he and Reese had broken up, he introduced me to his new girlfriend, Taylor Swift. I'm just saying.
He's doing good, yeah.
Yeah, he's doing just fine. It doesn't surprise me about Jake. He is a good-looking guy. He is charismatic. He is nice, but he doesn't play the dog in life. So he's like, "What? You want me to get the number?" Like, he's embarrassed. He doesn't want to be that guy.
He seems very genuine.
Yeah.
I would definitely give him my number.
I was just going to say, if you were the girl in the bathroom, would you get... Okay.
He wouldn't have to ask. I would be literally like throwing pieces of paper at him, all that have my phone number on them.
You wouldn't tell him to get out of the bathroom if you were in there?
No.
Oh, okay. You mentioned earlier that his character, fell in love with Anne Hathaway's character because she rejected him.
That is a big, huge of what attracts us to people. It's the "I want what I can't have" syndrome. Sometimes we can't have anything.
My process with Annie was quite the opposite. Her comedy chops were never in question. We did research together, talked to doctors, visited hospitals, and met with several young women in the same situation as her character. Their stories were wonderful and often counterintuitive. More than one of them talked about how important sex was to them. Sure, there was the endorphin rush and the feeling how it made them feel young and desirable, but they also made a point of telling us their tremors were always less intense after they had abandoned themselves to lovemaking.
I think that's important context for me for the sex in the movie, because she really threw herself at Jake's character. She only stopped throwing herself at Jake's character when he became "I love you." Remember when he said "I love you," and she's like, "Get out."
Yeah.
So she liked the sex because she didn't feel like she had the disease when she had sex.
So that's so interesting, because one of the scenes that was a really big standout for me is after they have sex one time and she is orgasming, she is doing the wonderfully beautiful twitchy orgasm thing that women sometimes do.
This happens? This is embarrassing. I've never seen this.
No. I never said any of that.
It's a myth.
No,
it's a myth.
That doesn't happen. Yeah.
Okay.
Total myth. So she, her hand is kind of up here, and she starts shaking, and you in your head as the voyeur, as the watcher of the movie, you're like, is that the Parkinson's, or is that her really enjoying the sex? Yeah. And Jake Gyllenhaal's character, his reaction to that is to grab her hand so that it stops shaking. Oh. And it's a very, very beautiful, very teeny tiny moment that made me feel connected to the two of them. Even though overall I didn't really feel great about them as a couple, I loved that moment. Is this the disease, or is this her? And then he doesn't care, because he's just, regardless of if it's orgasm or if it's the disease, he's comforting her. And that's quite beautiful. It's a cool clip. I liked that audio clip a lot. That was really great.
It's a great clip.
In addition to signing on Hank Azaria, Oliver Platt, and Judy Greer, three of the funniest comic actors in town as key supporting cast members, I hired Josh Gad for his first movie role as Jamie's wealthy brother, and he crushed it. He made a delightful third wheel to Jamie and Maggie's efforts to be a couple. I went out of my way to make sure Josh and Jake spent time together before shooting. Josh's irrepressible madcap humor could be counted on to lighten Jake up. He took special pleasure in making fun of the nudity he was about to do. On the last day of shooting, he gave me a picture as a wrap gift. It's Josh, having dropped his trowel, looking back over his shoulder and smiling. And the caption is, I discovered Josh Gad.
How romantic.
Yeah, I love it. He's got this ass picture of Josh that he keeps with that. And that's why I said it was his first film, but I guess probably, like I said, it's his first major Hollywood film. This was he did other projects.
Or acting role as opposed to voice acting. Because didn't he do quite a bit of voice acting?
He did a little bit of voice acting, but I think it was probably extras. I didn't see where he is on the credits for these other films pre this one, but he wasn't fourth bill type thing. It was probably,
Everyone dreads a sex scene. The actors worry about being exploited. The director worries about being the exploiter. I'm sure the presence of an intimacy consultant, a new wrinkle I've yet to experience, can help. But only porn stars seem comfortable turning a private act into a public performance. The fact is that many audiences, especially Americans as compared to, say, Europeans, are uncomfortable watching sex in movies, especially when it's gratuitous. Sometimes, though, it's just as disingenuous not to include such behavior in a relationship, especially in a movie that aspires to be authentic about men and women. So what to do? Not unlike showing violence. If the scene serves the narrative, if it advances the story, it deserves to be in. If it exists merely to titillate, it's out. The only possible approach was to regard it as just another scene and make damn sure everyone involved was comfortable with it.
There he's expressing quite clearly, because he recognizes there's a lot in this film. So
yeah, and I think that he's right, and I think that he succeeded in that with this movie. I don't think that anything was gratuitous. Perhaps the foot stuff a little bit for me.
The foot stuff. People are going to watch this film. They're going to wait for that foot stuff.
It was so much. And there were just the 2 foot scenes. I think that all of the sex scenes themselves, they really did serve the purpose of showing what either character was like, what their relationship was like. I think that it was incredibly valid. And I think that he's completely right also there about the American audience not really being able to deal with the gratuitous sex scenes. We can deal with gratuitous violence, but we sure do struggle with sex scenes for some reason.
Yeah, well, they have nude beaches, for example, in Europe, and we just don't in North America or States. And I'm from Canada, but
I can think of a couple of nude beaches in Canada that I'm familiar with.
Yeah, I know one too where I'm from, but yeah. So Whittiers Lagoon, people know Whittiers Lagoon. You just go to the right a little bit around the corner, and yeah.
But I don't know of any in the States. I'm sure that they exist.
You know when you know. Yeah. Who's the first one to disrobe? I am now declaring this a nude beach. Pull down your pants. Okay, we're all good? We're good? Okay, this is now a nude beach.
Nobody ran away. Everything is great.
Yeah, everything's good, yeah.
A prudish attitude in Love and Other Drugs, comedy about Viagra, would have been ridiculous. Jake and Annie understood this, and they were affectionate with each other and good-humored. We had 2 weeks of rehearsal. It was literally the 3 of us in a room, playing, talking about the books that moved us, and watching some pretty racy sex scenes from other movies. It was a little awkward at first, but we got over it soon enough. We were professionals looking at work we'd admired that also just happened to turn us on. We looked at Don't Look Now, Sex and Lucia, and many more. We explored the range of what we liked and what would make Jake look great and Annie look beautiful. We discussed what they were comfortable with and what would be going too far. What we were going for was an authentic cinematic representation of 2 people in love.
I guess if you're not comfortable watching sex scenes together, you probably won't be comfortable doing them together.
Doing one together, yeah.
Every time Annie would put on her robe, it would rub off all her body makeup, and it would take 20 minutes to reapply it. Eventually, modesty gave way to comedy as Annie told her wardrobe supervisor in her best cop voice, "Step away from the actors, ma'am." Things got even sillier on a day the schedule called for them to be in bed from the first shot in the morning till wrap, while wearing nothing but a strategically placed little chamois merkin taped to their nether parts. "Very strong tape, please," Jake called to the wardrobe supervisor. "The kind you used on, say, Pirates of the Caribbean to keep their wigs on while they were in an action sequence." Some moments were less silly, though. Not in terms of sex, but of safety. No matter how carefully choreographed and rehearsed a scene may be, things can change in the heat of the moment. In the scene in the kitchen when they impulsively have sex for the first time, banging into the stove, knocking pots and pans to the floor as they tear each other's clothes off. It was obvious neither of them could wear padding. Afterward, I remember Annie trying not to let Jake see that she was badly bruised. When he noticed, he was genuinely distraught. Throughout the shooting, it was moving to see just how tender and caring they were toward each other.
It just shows you how, I guess, quote-unquote, real it can actually get. I wonder, I mean, they're good-looking people. They're young. They're both in their 20s. Are they enjoying it at all? Is there any
I don't know. I struggle with this a lot. I never know.
Yeah.
I always believe that if you are simulating something like that, that eventually you are also going to get turned on. I can't separate those two things. On the other hand, I'm a horrible actor. And I'm very well aware of that. Like, I could never actually be an actor. So perhaps the reason that I can't separate those two things is because I don't have that ability to do the acting switch. Reviewing Lust, Caution, and that movie is very infamous because the sex scenes look incredibly realistic. There is a lot of nudity in those sex scenes. They look like they are having non-simulated sex in that movie.
Right.
I would argue that in Love and Other Drugs, it almost looks non-simulated at times because they look like they are truly enjoying each other.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to fake that. Perhaps Jake Gyllenhaal and Anne Hathaway are just that great of actors that they can. I can't imagine like leaving that scene, a director calls cut, and then you actually stop heavy breathing. I'm heavy breathing all of a sudden. And then the director's like, cut. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm totally fine. Everything's great.
I think if I was a good actor,
Yeah.
I think the two would coincide. I think I would have fun, and I'd be that guy that says, I'm sorry if I get turned on. I'm sorry if I don't. I think that's the best line you can give your co-star is like, we're doing a job, we're having fun. It is acting, but that's the trust. Like, it's okay that we can have fun. It's kind of fun to be with a good looking person and roll around the hay, you know?
Yeah. Your romantic partner in the real world would probably be more upset than your partner in the scene. So during the filming of this, Gyllenhaal was with Reese Witherspoon. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did I get that timeline?
Maybe that's why they broke up after. I don't know.
If I was Reese Witherspoon, not that I would be on set that day. If I was with Jake Gyllenhaal and I was Reese Witherspoon, and then he came back from work one day and I was like, how was work? And he was like, well, we did the sex scene. The first thing that I would be like is, did you get a boner? Like,
I know.
That's the first question that I would ask. And then if I felt like he was lying, and I was a crazy woman, not that Reese Witherspoon is, but like,
no, I don't think so.
If I was a crazy woman, then I would go to Anne Hathaway and I would be like, you tell me if he got a boner.
Again, I'm sure in all the films and all the actors, that kind of stuff happens. Yeah, absolutely. There's no way it doesn't.
Yeah.
In fact, there's some actors who have a no kiss clause.
Yep.
You know, I will not kiss my co-star because I'm happily married. To answer your question, I'm sure there's both sides of the spectrum. Some say there's no way I'm kissing somebody. If it's in the dialogue, we just don't show it. In the screenplay, we're just not showing it. And then you got people like Jake and Anne. So yeah, and then they got partners. I'm sure some of them aren't thrilled by it. Yeah. Good point.
Anne Hathaway is a gamer, emotionally available and always willing. She had already done brave, heartbreaking work on more challenging scenes in the film. Yet, as the finale approached, I could tell she was anxious. With two great actors, it's hard to choose who's close up to shoot first. I asked Jake to go first. He was every bit as anxious, but agreed without hesitation. As we rolled, though, it just wasn't happening for him, and he knew it. Off camera, Annie could see he was having trouble and realized he needed help. It's impossible to exaggerate just how much one actor's work influences another's. But as Jake found the magic and his performance blossomed, I happened to glance off camera and saw Annie's face wet with tears. She had given herself to him completely. A complete reverse of camera direction takes time. Annie stood alone, waiting, listening to music, trying to stay inside herself. When at last we rolled, despite Jake's equally generous work off camera, she couldn't get there. Take after take, she kept trying. Finally, she took me aside and whispered, "I'm dry." She knew I wanted her to cry, and I had made it worse by acknowledging it. "Annie," I said, putting my arm around her, "you are great in this movie. There is absolutely no need to cry in this scene." At which point she burst into tears, and I called roll.
This is going to sound terrible. I believe the story completely, and I get what's happening here. But Anne, I can't handle it. I think she might be a lot for me to handle. And I think Ed handled her.
Reverse psychology into doing it.
That's Ed's ability as a director. Yeah. I don't know. I don't want to use the term bipolar because that's really mean and it's a real condition. But there's something about her that you talked about that flip of a switch, and she's doing that in real life here.
I like how much you question her. I think
I don't know why.
No, for a very long time I was like that with Nick Cage. I finally have gotten over that and now I like him. But I went through a very long period of time in my life where I just could not deal with him and everything that he did was wrong. And I feel like that's kind of how you are with Anne Hathaway, and I like it and I appreciate it because I think that we all have our actor that we're like, nope, this person is a jerk because of X, Y, and Z, no matter how much we think that they might not actually be a jerk.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying very hard here to be diplomatic.
I feel you. You're doing a great job of diplomacy, but I understand.
I'm in the Nick Cage moment. I'm in the Nick Cage phase. This is the last story, the last clip, and this is the biggest piece of evidence to where I'm getting at. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Let's hear it.
My experience with Annie was as magical and gratifying as any I'd ever had. She understood what I'd gone through with great compassion, and there are moments in her performance that are unerringly familiar. At Rap, she wrote me the most beautiful note. I still have it pasted into one of my notebooks. Soon after, I showed her an original script Marshall and I had just finished and asked her to play the female lead. After reading it, she had some great suggestions that we incorporated into our rewrite, which she read and loved and immediately said yes. 3 weeks later, her manager called. Annie wasn't going to do it. No explanation. Actors never want to be the ones who say no. It's their prerogative, of course, maybe because they're afraid you won't send them the next one. Still, I wish she had told me herself. We've run into each other several times since then over the years, and are genuinely happy to see each other. Neither of us has ever mentioned that script. Hollywood.
So, thoughts on that? I mean, how should I say this? I think that story, if I was to be analyzing this behavior, she has this ability to say the things that you need to hear in that moment to make people feel good. Jake, you're doing great. Oh, Jake's crying for the director. I'm crying too. This is what you want to hear. And that's part of her maybe being an actress. She just tells the audience, whether you're the director or the moviegoer, what you're expected of her in that moment. But then when she's out of the scene,
I think I figured it out.
Oh,
okay. I assume that you went to some sort of a public school. What were your drama kids like in your school? You guys had like a drama club, and they were all literally dramatic, right?
Right. Yes.
All of those kids, they were constant. And now you have the adult version of drama kids. So now probably in your life, in your friend circle, you have your drama kid friends who may or may not have been literally or figuratively in the drama club in high school. But regardless, they just love drama and they love picking things and they love, let me just reinterpret this in my little way right here. Perhaps Anne Hathaway is the epitome of a drama kid. She is doing the drama kid thing, which is, I'm going to be whoever you want me to be.
Yeah.
That means drama a lot of the time.
So something that seems inauthentic, I think is what it is. Like, it's okay to be an actor and actress, whereas, like, again, Jake, he seems authentic, but he's just an actor. So when he was always good to go, he's like, yeah, I'm ready to do this. I'm ready to do that. Whatever you need, it's good to go. Where she's like, oh, you need me to cry? He's like, oh, you're wonderful. You don't have to cry. Oh, I'm crying now. It's like, I don't know. Come on. I think Ed's just too much of a sweetheart to say anything. But he did kind of mention, like, negative. He did say, I wish she told me directly. Because what happens, it was only 3 weeks later, too. It wasn't even like 6 months later. It was 3 weeks. Like, can you message Ed and tell him I'm not doing the film? And no explanation why. Wouldn't it be better to say, I committed to another film? But the fact that she didn't even give a reason, I think it's better to say, I'm not feeling that right now. I felt it then. I'm just not feeling it right now. And I've committed to a different role that I really believe in. I hope you understand. But there was no reason, which I think is worse.
It's just, I will never understand the politics of crap like that. I will defend Anne to some extent because as a woman, anytime that I say no to something, I'm a bitch.
Oh,
so like there is absolutely 110% when I'm on Who Are These Podcasts and there is a group of guys. So let's say that I'm on with 3 other guys and all of our faces are on the screen and none of us are smiling. You know, like all of us are just kind of like watching a clip, very plain faced.
Right.
All of the comments will be like, why does Lucy look like she doesn't want to be there? Not why don't the guys want to be there? It's the same kind of a fact when it comes to women and saying no to things. If I say no, I don't want to go on so-and-so's podcast. Oh, well, she's just an awful person. It can't be, oh, she's busy. Oh, she was
You're not
sick
feeling
that week. Yeah, or I just don't want to. Like, why am I allowed to not want to do? I have to want to do everything as a woman.
That's a very good point.
I will give her that little bit of credit there.
No, and I appreciate and honestly, I hate that we're almost not allowed to say it now, but I'm going to say I appreciate your female perspective because I'm not a female. You experience things that I don't experience and vice versa. So you have a whole perspective and scrutiny that absolutely, I understand what you're saying. So logically, I know what you're saying. I don't experience that.
On the other hand, I buck up and just say no. I'll be honest that sometimes I just don't ever respond, but that's because I'm very bad at responding to messages, not because I'm not trying to respond. It's just because I'm months behind on messages regularly.
Right.
What I will say is that if I'm not interested in doing something, I will say back to somebody, and she should have. I agree with you totally there. You got to buck up Buttercup at some point and just be able to say, hey, listen, I'm not going to do this. I appreciate the offer, but I'm declining. And that's honestly all you have to say. You don't even have to give a reason. I appreciate the honor and I'm declining.
Not only she did not give a reason, but she sent her staff to do it. Oof. Because they just worked together on the film. It's weird that anyways, that's where I feel bad for Ed because he's a sweetheart of a guy. He seems like.
I agree.
Well, we reached the end. I've taken, as they say, too much of your time. It's been a real pleasure to have you on the show. Absolutely a real pleasure. I'm glad you picked this film because I needed your perspective regarding what goes on in this film. I had talked to another guy about this film. Had been a whole different conversation. So I'm really glad I had you for this conversation. And again, tell people where they can find you.
I just want to first say I am so honored to be here. It is a pleasure joining you for any or all of your podcasts. I have such a great time chatting with you. I think that you have really interesting perspectives. It makes me excited to be able to talk about movies, which are one of my favorite things and one of the things that I discuss the most on my little YouTube channel over there in my corner of the universe, which is Once Over with Cayley, Cayley. And I talk about all sorts of different movies there. In addition to that, you can find me on Patreon, where you get early releases of those movie reviews, as well as popsicle reviews. Very unsexy. We eat them with a fork and a knife over there because we don't objectify anybody, ever.
Good.
No objectification.
Good.
Ooh, yeah. Very inappropriate. And then in addition to that, you can also find me on Who Are These Podcasts. Lately, I have been doing a segment over there where we look at, I suppose, at least temporarily, we're calling it Lucy's Losers, where we are examining all sorts of weird YouTube lolcows, where we're just kind of diving into the craziest of the crazy of people.
Bless their hearts that they exist because they give us content that we can enjoy.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, God, I love them so much, and yet I hate them.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much. Thanks all who watched and listened to this episode.